My parents called me ungrateful. Now I made them legally regret it. My name is Sophia, and I'm 27 years old. I've always tried to be a good daughter. The one who keeps the peace, who smiles through the subtle insults and the passive-aggressive comments from my parents, Peter and Lily. I've worked hard to get to where I am now, a graphic designer, with my own small apartment in a quiet part of town. It's modest, but it's mine. I worked for every penny that's kept me afloat. I built my life from the ground up, and for the most part, I'm proud of it. But pride isn't something my parents understand, and they never have. My dad, Peter, is a self-made man. He prides himself on the fact that he built his entire business from scratch, and with that comes a sense of entitlement. He believes his success means everyone around him, especially his children, should follow his exact blueprint for life. He doesn't have room for the dreamers, the ones who take risks, the ones who want something different. And that's where I fall short. Then there's my mom, Lily. She's always been the softer of the two, but her kindness is a facade. She uses guilt like a weapon, constantly reminding me of everything she's done for me. The way she'll cook a big meal and then sigh dramatically, saying things like, "I just want to see my daughter succeed. If only you would listen to your father, maybe you'd get ahead." It's manipulative, it's toxic, and I've had enough. And then there's my younger sister, Emily. Emily is everything my parents wanted in a daughter, obedient, eager to please, and utterly lost in their expectations. I love her, but sometimes I wonder if she's ever realized she's just a puppet in their hands. She's the one who doesn't challenge anything. She's the perfect daughter, the one they put on a pedestal, and she's the one who always gets their approval. But me? I'm a disappointment. At least, that's how they see me. I'm not sure when I realized that I couldn't keep living under their control, but that feeling started building inside me years ago. It came to a head when I started my career. I was ambitious and eager to prove myself, but my parents? They didn't approve. To them, a stable job with a salary was the only path to success, and my freelance work in art was nothing more than a hobby. They called it unrealistic, irresponsible, and unwise. Every time I achieved something, no matter how big, it was overshadowed by their disappointment that I wasn't following their path. And then there was the financial sabotage. It wasn't obvious at first, but when I really started looking at my bank statements, I noticed something was off. Over a few months, large sums of money had been withdrawn from my savings account. At first, I thought it was a mistake, a simple glitch. But then the withdrawals started getting bigger, and I realized something was wrong. I tried calling the bank, but they couldn't give me any solid answers. That's when I started digging. I couldn't ignore the creeping suspicion anymore, and what I uncovered turned my world upside down. I had been living in denial for a while. I didn't want to face the reality of what was happening, so I put off investigating the strange charges on my account. But after a particularly heated argument with my dad about my lack of direction and my career choices, I decided I needed to take a closer look. It started when I noticed an unexplained deposit in my account, followed by a series of odd withdrawals that I hadn't authorized. The amounts were small at first, easy to overlook, but then they began to grow larger. And that's when I discovered the worst part. The payments were coming from a joint account my parents had opened in my name years ago. I had no idea this account even existed. The account wasn't just set up for convenience. It had been set up with the intent to control me, to keep tabs on me, even financially. My dad, a man obsessed with his success and controlling everything around him, had been siphoning off my funds for months. I was paying for things I had no idea about, things I hadn't authorized, like a payment to an investment property that didn't even exist. That was when I knew it was all a game to him. A way to keep me in check, to keep me dependent on them, always coming back for more, always chasing something they'd never let me have. When I confronted them, my dad was quick to brush it off. He told me I was being too sensitive, and that the funds were just a loan to help me get ahead. But that didn't explain why he had been slowly draining my account for months. He just kept pushing it back on me, guilt-tripping me about how difficult things had been for him and my mom, and how they had done so much for me, and how it was all for my benefit. I couldn't take it anymore. It wasn't long before my parents called. They wanted to meet up, to clear the air, but I knew what it meant. They weren't interested in making things right. They were interested in keeping me under their control. I wasn't going to let that happen anymore. I had made up my mind. I was done letting them run my life, done letting them manipulate me with guilt and lies. The conversation wasn't going to be the same this time. I had come to terms with the fact that I wasn't going to be the daughter they wanted. I was going to be the daughter they feared. When I arrived at their house, I was met with the usual fake smiles and polite pleasantries. But I could feel the tension between us, the unspoken history of control and manipulation lingering in the air. I sat down, my heart pounding in my chest as they began to talk. "Sophia, we just want to help you," Lily said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "You know we only want what's best for you, right?" I couldn't hold back anymore. "Enough," I said, my voice sharp, cutting through the usual pleasantries. "I've had enough of your help, Mom. I'm not going to be your puppet anymore. I'm not going to keep pretending that everything is okay while you drain my bank account and ruin my life." Peter's face hardened. "What are you talking about?" I leaned forward, staring at him. I know what you've been doing. I know about the account. I know you've been stealing from me. And you think I'm just going to let that slide? No, I'm done." His eyes widened with shock, but he quickly masked it with anger. "You have no idea what you're talking about. You think I've been stealing from you? You owe me, Sophia. We gave you everything. Everything." I shook my head. "You gave me nothing. You've manipulated me my entire life, and I'm done. I've been paying for things I didn't even know existed. You're not helping me, Dad. You're controlling me. And I'm done with it." The silence in the room was deafening. It was the first time in my life I had stood up to them, and it felt like the first step toward freedom. The following days after the confrontation felt like a blur. My mind was racing, my heart still pounding from the intensity of the exchange. The relief I had hoped for after standing up to them wasn't immediate. It didn't come with a sense of freedom or victory, not at first. Instead, there was a quiet emptiness, like I had just torn a huge chunk out of my life but hadn't fully processed the consequences of it yet. I knew what I had done was necessary, but it didn't make it easier. I had just alienated myself from the people I had once thought I would always rely on. And the worst part was, they didn't even see it. They didn't understand why I was hurt, why I was angry. They were too consumed with their selfish view of the world to care about how their actions had affected me. I didn't speak to them for days after that. I stayed in my apartment, focusing on work, and doing everything I could to keep my mind occupied. But I could feel their presence hanging over me, like a dark cloud that wouldn't go away. It wasn't just their calls or messages that haunted me. It was the realization that no matter how much I fought to break free, the weight of their influence still lingered. The financial situation was no better. The account I discovered was just the tip of the iceberg. I had no idea how deep it ran, but I was determined to find out. The trust one had placed in my parents was gone, and now I needed to make sure I wasn't left holding the pieces when everything fell apart. I called Grace, my lawyer, and set up an appointment. She was quick to take action, suggesting I start by getting a forensic accountant involved to trace the full extent of the withdrawals and any other hidden accounts they might have opened in my name. This wasn't just about getting my money back. It was about taking back control. It was about showing my parents that they could no longer manipulate me, no longer use me to prop up their lies while they bled me dry. One thing I knew for sure was that I had to be smart about how I moved forward. I couldn't go charging in, guns blazing, expecting everything to just fall into place. If I did that, they would just bury me with guilt, as they always did. So I kept my distance. I acted like nothing was wrong. But it wasn't long before the cracks began to show. I was at a cafe, working on a project for a client when my phone buzzed. I didn't recognize the number, but the area code was local, so I answered. "Hello? Is this Sophia?" The voice on the other end was unfamiliar, but something about it made me feel uneasy. "Yes, who is this?" "This is Lucas. I'm calling from the bank, the one where your parents set up a joint account under your name. We've noticed some suspicious activity, and we need to confirm a few things with you." My stomach dropped. This wasn't just a mistake anymore. It was a full-blown financial scheme. "What kind of activity?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "There have been a series of large transactions recently, including payments to a private investment account and withdrawals for property management services. We just need confirmation that these were authorized by you." I could feel my pulse racing as I listened to the details. I had no idea what he was talking about. Private investment accounts? Property management services? My parents had been using my name for investments without my consent. "No," I said, my voice tight with disbelief. "I did not authorize any of that." The man on the other end sounded concerned. "I'm going to flag these transactions for investigation. I suggest you contact us directly if you have any further concerns." I ended the call, my head spinning. I had no idea how deep this went, how much they had used my name to manipulate and control things. And now, it wasn't just about what they had taken from me financially. It was about how they had tied me into their web of lies, how they had made me a part of their schemes without ever asking if I wanted to be. The next day, I met with Grace and explained everything. I told her about the phone call, the investment accounts, and the property management services. She looked at me with a steady, calm expression, but I could see the fire behind her eyes. She had seen this kind of thing before. "Your parents aren't just overbearing, Sophia," she said as she flipped through the documents I had brought her. "They're financially exploiting you. And from what you're telling me, it's been going on for years. This goes beyond emotional manipulation. They're using your name for their financial gain, and that's something we can take action on." I nodded, feeling a mix of anger and betrayal. I had always known that my parents were controlling, but this was different. They had crossed a line, and I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I was going to make them pay for everything they had done. "We'll start by freezing the accounts and getting a forensic accountant involved," Grace continued. "We'll also need to prepare for a potential lawsuit. But the first step is making sure they can't access any more of your funds." As Grace spoke, I felt a wave of determination wash over me. This was it. The final step. The moment I had been preparing for. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. In the following weeks, things moved quickly. Grace worked tirelessly to gather the evidence we needed, and the forensic accountant quickly uncovered several hidden accounts, some even more extensive than I had imagined. The withdrawals, the investments and properties I didn't even know existed, it was all laid out in black and white. My parents had been siphoning off my money for years, using me as a pawn in their financial game. When I finally got the chance to sit down with them again, I had all the evidence. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just resolute. You knew what you were doing, I said calmly, laying out the documents in front of them. You used my name. You manipulated me into believing that I owed you something when all along you were stealing from me. Peter's face turned a shade of red I hadn't seen before. Lily just stared at me, wide-eyed, as if she hadn't expected this confrontation. I don't know what you're talking about, Peter stammered, trying to play it off. But there was no escaping the evidence. I leaned forward, my voice steady but unyielding. You don't get to play the victim anymore. You've taken everything from me, and now it's time for me to take control of my life. I could see the guilt in his eyes, but it was too late. It was strange. After all that time spent under their thumb, under the constant weight of their expectations and manipulation, I thought that once I had the evidence, once I stood up to them, everything would feel like an immediate release. But instead, the days after the confrontation felt heavier. I had shattered the illusion of family unity, and though the truth had come out, I couldn't ignore the aftermath. It didn't take long for Peter and Lily to start scrambling. I had expected the rage, the denial, the manipulation, but I hadn't prepared for the desperate tactics they would pull next. When they realized they couldn't twist the narrative in their favor anymore, they resorted to the only tool they had left, guilt. But this time, I wasn't buying it. A few days after the confrontation, I received a message from Emily. She wanted to meet. I hadn't talked to her much since everything had gone down, and I wasn't sure how she would react. In a way, I knew she was just as trapped as I had been, but she hid it behind a facade of compliance. She was the good daughter, the one who always did what they asked, the one who always sought approval. The ones who still lived under their roof still followed their rules. I agreed to meet her at the park, thinking maybe she just needed to get out of their house for a bit. When I saw her walking toward me, her face was strained, like she had been carrying something heavy, but she didn't know how to let it go. Hey, she said quietly, sitting down beside me on the bench. How are you? I looked at her, trying to read her expression. She wasn't the same as she used to be. I could see it in her eyes, the exhaustion, the helplessness. She was struggling with something, but she wasn't ready to share it. I'm okay, I said, keeping my voice even. How about you? She sighed, running her fingers through her hair. Mom and Dad, they're not taking this well. They keep calling me, asking me to fix things with you, saying they just want to help you. But I don't know what to do anymore. I don't want to choose between them and you, sophomore. I don't want to lose my family. I nodded slowly, understanding the position she was in. She was torn, just like I had been. But she was still caught in the trap, still trying to please them, trying to keep the peace. I had once been there too. Always trying to please, always trying to make everyone happy. You don't have to choose, Em, I said gently. But you need to see what they're doing. This isn't about helping me. It's about controlling me, and they'll do the same to you if you let them. You don't have to carry their guilt on your shoulders. She shook her head, her eyes welling with tears. I'm scared, sophomore. I don't want to be the one who breaks the family apart. I don't want them to hate me. They're already using you to get to me, I said, my voice more firm now. They want you to be their ally, to make me feel guilty for standing up for myself. But that's not your burden. You don't have to fix their problems, Em. And you don't have to fix mine. I've made my decision, and it's the best thing I've ever done. Emily fell silent for a moment, her eyes flicking downward. She looked so small in that moment, so vulnerable. It was painful to see her like this. The girl who once had such big dreams and so much fire was now a shadow of that person, weighed down by the very people who should have been her support system. I just want you to be happy, she whispered, her voice breaking. I don't want you to lose everything over this. I placed a hand on hers, offering what comfort I could. I'm not losing anything, Em. I'm gaining back everything I've lost. And one day, you'll see it too. After my meeting with Emily, I thought things would settle down, but I couldn't have been more wrong. The following weeks were filled with their manipulative tactics. They called me incessantly, demanding I come back to them, telling me how much they had sacrificed for me. They even sent me text messages, pretending to be concerned about my well-being, but I knew what it was really about. They were trying to pull me back into their web. At one point, my father sent me a text that made my stomach churn. It was straightforward and terrifying in its implication. You think you can win, Sophia? You're not the only one with power. Remember who put you on the map. Remember who helped you get this far. And if you continue this path, you'll lose more than just me. You'll lose everything you've worked for. It wasn't just an empty threat. It was a warning. Peter had always had a way of using his connections, his power, and his wealth to keep people in check. He didn't like to lose control. And now that I had broken free, he was trying to use every leverage he had to pull me back in. But this time, it wasn't working. I was done being afraid of him. Done being afraid of them. While I dealt with the emotional fallout of my family's manipulative behavior, the financial sabotage was escalating. The forensic accountant had uncovered even more damning information. Peter and Lily had been siphoning funds from several of my other personal accounts I hadn't even realized they had access to. They'd manipulated investments in my name, redirected income from side projects, and even tapped into savings accounts I thought were secure. It wasn't just about draining my savings anymore. It was about their ability to use their power over me, to make me think that I was nothing without them. They didn't just want to control my career, they wanted to control me. The money was just a means to an end. I had no choice. I had to fight back. And I did. Grace and I filed a lawsuit. It wasn't just about the stolen funds anymore. It was about finally putting an end to their manipulation. The lawsuit was complicated, but it had the potential to force them to admit their wrongdoing in court. It would expose them to what they were: manipulative, controlling, and abusive. I was ready to take this all the way, no matter the cost. And it wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about taking back my life, taking back the freedom they had stolen from me. And no matter what they threw at me, the guilt, the threats, the manipulation, I was no longer afraid of losing them. The only thing I feared now was losing myself. And I wouldn't let that happen. I didn't expect it to be easy. I knew that once I filed the lawsuit, once I stepped into this battle against my parents, the storm would rage. But the last few weeks had been worse than I could have imagined. The emotional toll of the constant phone calls, the threats, and the guilt trips weighed on me every single day. My dad was relentless, trying to use every ounce of influence and power he had to break me down. It was no longer just about the money. It was about forcing me to admit I couldn't live without their control, to make me feel like a failure for trying to take back my own life. But I couldn't give up now. The legal proceedings were complicated, as I had expected. My parents had deep pockets, and their influence ran through every corner of our community. I wasn't just fighting for money, I was fighting for my independence, for my right to be seen as an equal in this world, not just a puppet to be pulled around by my parents' strings. Grace, my lawyer, was as relentless as they came. She wasn't intimidated by my parents' status or their money. In fact, she was ready to go after everything, not just the financial damage they had done to me, but the emotional and psychological toll they had put me through. It wasn't just about the stolen funds. It was about holding them accountable for years of control, for decades of manipulation, for using me as their personal piggy bank and emotional punching bag. Grace and I had several meetings over the next few weeks. She gathered more evidence and more documents. We subpoenaed the bank for everything they had on record, starting with the account they had set up under my name, the one I didn't know about. Then we moved on to the other hidden accounts and assets they had siphoned funds from. It was like peeling back layers of lies and deceit, uncovering every dirty secret they had kept buried for so long. It wasn't just my parents' financial misdeeds that we uncovered. There was something much worse, something that hit me like a ton of bricks. While going through the documents, we discovered a series of emails between Peter and a business partner that revealed something I never could have imagined. My father had been using my name to secure loans and investments that I never agreed to. Worse still, he had been funneling money into a series of shell companies. They were all tied to this business ventures that had nothing to do with me, but that I was financially responsible for. At first, I didn't want to believe it. How could he do this to me? To his daughter? But there it was, in black and white. He had been using my identity to build a financial empire behind my back. I wasn't just a victim of emotional manipulation. I was also a victim of financial exploitation, and I had been unknowingly responsible for debts I didn't even know existed. The betrayal cut deeper than I had ever imagined. It wasn't just about the stolen funds anymore. It was about the trust he had destroyed. He had used my name without my knowledge, without my consent, and without any care for the consequences it might have on me. The money was one thing, but the violation of trust, that was unforgivable. I sat alone in my apartment that night, the documents scattered in front of me, as I tried to process everything I had just uncovered. My phone buzzed, and I saw that it was a message from Emily. "Saf, I need to talk to you. Please. I'm sorry. I don't know what to do. They've been calling me nonstop. They're trying to get me to convince you to drop the lawsuit. Please come over." I sighed, my heart heavy with a mix of emotions. Emily had always been the one who tried to keep the peace, the one who believed everything could be fixed if we just tried harder. But I couldn't keep doing that. I couldn't keep pretending that things were okay when they weren't. I grabbed my jacket and drove over to her place. When I arrived, she was already sitting on the couch, her eyes red from crying. She had been under the same pressure from our parents, but she didn't know how to handle it. She was still caught in their web. "I don't know what to do, Saf," she whispered, shaking her head. "They keep telling me that you're making a mistake. They say you'll ruin everything, that they've only ever tried to help you." I sat down beside her, my hand on her shoulder. "They've been controlling us, Em. They've been using us, and it's time to stop. You don't have to listen to them anymore." "But I don't want to lose them," she said, her voice breaking. "I don't want to lose my family." "You won't lose me," I replied, my voice firm. "You won't lose me. But you have to stop letting them manipulate you. They've made us think that we can't live without them, but that's a lie. They've made us feel guilty for everything, even for wanting to live our own lives. You're stronger than this, Em." She looked at me for a long moment, her eyes filled with fear and uncertainty. Then, Finally, she nodded. I'll try, but I don't know if I can do it on my own. You don't have to do it alone, I said. I'm here, and we'll figure this out together. I had hoped that after talking to Emily, things would calm down. But my parents weren't about to let me walk away without a fight. They began using every tactic they had left: emotional manipulation, threats, and guilt trips, all aimed at getting me to back down. Peter called me one evening, his voice cold and calculating. You don't know what you're doing, Sophia, he said, his tone clipped. You're about to ruin everything we've built. You're about to destroy your own future. I didn't flinch. I've already destroyed my future by listening to you, I said, my voice steady. This isn't about saving face anymore. This is about taking back my life. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could almost hear his mind racing, trying to find a way to manipulate me once again. I can make this all go away, Sophia. All you have to do is walk away from this lawsuit. If you do that, I'll make sure your career takes off. I'll invest in your business. You won't have to worry about a thing. His words were like poison. It was all a ploy to get me to stop fighting, to make me feel like I was nothing without his help. But I wasn't falling for it. Not anymore. No deal, I said, my voice final. I'm done with you. And for the first time in my life, I meant it. I thought I had prepared myself for what was to come. I thought that after months of emotional manipulation, after everything I had uncovered, after finally standing up for myself, I would be able to breathe freely. But I was wrong, because the real fight had only just begun. It wasn't just about the legal battle anymore. It wasn't even just about the money. It was about my entire identity, my sense of self, my future, my very soul. My parents had spent years manipulating me, controlling me, making me feel like I owed them everything, that I could never live without their approval. And now that I was breaking free, they were willing to do anything to bring me back under their control. The calls from my parents didn't stop. If anything, they grew more frequent, more intense. Every day, I would find dozens of missed calls, text messages, and emails begging me to reconsider. But it wasn't just that. It was the threats, subtle at first, but quickly escalating. We're doing this for your good, Sophia, my dad would say on voicemail after voicemail. You'll regret this decision. It's not just your career that's at stake. It's your future. And then there was my mom, with her sweet, seemingly innocent voice. Sophia, please, don't do this. I'm just trying to help you. We love you. We've always wanted the best for you. It was exhausting, trying to keep up with their manipulations. They were relentless. Every time I thought I had broken free, they would find a new way to reel me back in. They didn't care that I had found my own path, that I was finally standing on my own 2 feet. All they cared about was maintaining control over me. I spent days ignoring their calls. I deleted their messages without even reading them. But there was something that no amount of ignoring could prepare me for. A letter arrived, and this wasn't just any letter. This was a final move. It came in a large, ominous envelope with a corporate letterhead that I didn't recognize. As soon as I saw it, I knew. They had taken it one step further. The letter was from a law firm, one that I had never heard of before. As I opened it, I felt the pit in my stomach grow. It was a cease and desist letter, but not for the reasons I expected. This was something much worse. They were not only threatening me with legal action over the lawsuit I had filed, but were also making a claim against me personally. The letter accused me of defamation, misrepresentation, and even theft of proprietary family assets. They were trying to turn the tables on me, attempting to make me the villain in this entire situation. They claimed that I had wrongfully misrepresented my parents' financial dealings, that I had damaged their reputation, and that my actions were causing irreparable harm to their business. The audacity of it all stunned me. They had been siphoning money from my accounts for years, using my name in illegal schemes, and now they were trying to make it seem like I was the one who had wronged them. It wasn't just a tactic to stop me from continuing the lawsuit. It was an all-out attempt to destroy me, to make me feel like I had no choice but to back down. But this time, I wasn't going to back down. I went straight to Grace. I had no idea what they were trying to pull, but I needed to know what my next move should be. This is a move of desperation, Grace said as she read through the letter. They're trying to intimidate you, Sophia. They know they can't win in court, so they're hoping you'll be scared enough to drop everything. But we're not backing down. We spent the next few days preparing for the worst. Grace filed a counterclaim, and I was ready to go to battle. I knew this wasn't going to be easy, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I had already lost too much to give up now. My fight for independence, for my future, was on the line, and I wasn't going to let them take that from me. Even with all my legal preparations, even with all the steps I was taking to protect myself, I felt like I was losing something more important than money or status. Every time I thought I could ignore my parents, every time I thought I could walk away, the guilt would sneak up on me. I wasn't just fighting for financial restitution. I was fighting against everything I had been taught to believe. There were days when I couldn't sleep, when I could hear my dad's voice in my head, reminding me of how much I owed him. And there were nights when I could still hear my mom's manipulative words, her guilt-ridden pleas, telling me I was making a huge mistake. I tried not to let it get to me, but it did. It always did. John, my boyfriend, could see the toll it was taking on me. He didn't fully understand what was happening, but he could feel the weight I was carrying. One night, he pulled me aside after I came home from another long day of meetings with Grace. "You're going to win. You know that, right?" he said, his hand gently resting on my shoulder. "You're stronger than they'll ever realize. But you don't have to do this alone. You've got me." I couldn't help but smile through the tears that had started to form. John was the calm in the storm. He never tried to fix things. He just offered his support, a constant reminder that I wasn't in this fight by myself. "I don't know if I can keep doing this," I confessed, my voice trembling. "It feels like they'll never stop coming after me. They won't let me go." "Then don't let them," he said, his voice steady. "You've already taken the hardest step, sophomore. You're not backing down now." It wasn't long before things escalated even further. One afternoon, I received another call. This time, it was from Emily. "Soph, I don't know what to do," she said, her voice barely audible, laced with panic. "Mom and Dad they're trying to get to me. They're threatening to cut me out of the family if I don't convince you to drop the lawsuit. They said if I don't get you to back off, they'll have nothing to do with me anymore." My heart sank as I listened to her. I could hear the fear in her voice, and it shattered me. She wasn't just scared for me, she was scared for herself. She was torn between her loyalty to me and the manipulation our parents were putting her through. I said softly, my voice cracking, "You don't have to do this. You don't have to pick a side. You have to do what's right for you." I know, she whispered, the words barely coming out. "But I don't know if I can take this anymore. I don't want to lose them, sophomore. I don't want to lose everything." "Listen to me," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "You don't have to lose anything. I'm here for you. We'll figure this out. But we need to do it together. I'm not backing down, and neither should you." The weeks following my conversation with Emily were a blur of anxiety and anticipation. The legal battle with my parents had reached a boiling point, and every single day felt like I was walking on a tightrope. My life, my future, my entire sense of self was hanging by a thread, and I knew it was only a matter of time before something had to give. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't scared. In fact, I was beginning to feel a sense of empowerment. I had spent so many years trying to please my parents, trying to live up to their expectations, but now I was finally doing something for myself. And the more I fought back, the more I realized that I wasn't just fighting for my own freedom, I was fighting for my future. For the person I wanted to be, not the one they had forced me to become. Grace had kept me in the loop with every development, and things were moving fast. Our case against my parents was stronger than ever. The forensic accountants had done their job well. The evidence of their financial manipulation was undeniable. The shell companies, the unauthorized loans, the siphoning of funds, all of it was laid out in black and white. But my parents weren't going to go down without a fight. The day before the next court hearing, I received another message. This one, though, was different. It wasn't from my parents. It wasn't a call from Emily either. It was a message from a private number. "I hope you know what you're doing, Sophia. Your reputation, your career, they can all be ruined in an instant. You think you've won, but this isn't the end. You'll regret crossing me." My pulse quickened as I read the message. The threat was clear. Peter wasn't just trying to intimidate me emotionally anymore. Now he was threatening my future, my career, everything I had worked so hard to build. I knew that he had the power to pull strings, to manipulate people behind the scenes. And I knew that if I gave him the chance, he would destroy me. But I wasn't going to let him. I showed the message to Grace the next day. Her eyes narrowed when she read it. And she didn't hesitate. "This is what we've been waiting for. This is the moment where we expose them for everything they've done. If they want to threaten you, we'll make sure everyone knows who they really are." Grace was fierce, and I love that about her. She wasn't afraid to play hardball, and I was ready to do whatever it took to win. I knew this wasn't going to be easy, but it didn't matter anymore. I wasn't going to back down. I had to protect myself, and I had to protect my future. The court hearing arrived, and I walked into the courthouse feeling a mix of nerves and adrenaline. The courtroom was filled with the usual bustle of legal proceedings, but today, everything felt different. This wasn't just another case. This was the moment I had been preparing for, the final confrontation that would determine the course of my life. When I stepped into the room, I saw my parents sitting at the front, their lawyer beside them. My father was sitting rigidly, his face a mask of anger and disbelief, while Lily was trying to act calm, but I could see the fear in her eyes. This wasn't how they imagined things would go. They thought I would cave, that I would be too scared to continue. They had underestimated me. I walked to the plaintiff's table and sat down beside Grace. I felt a sense of calm wash over me. I had done everything I needed to do. The truth was on my side. The judge entered, and the proceedings began. It was tense, the air thick with the weight of what was at stake. My parents' lawyer tried to undermine my claims, tried to discredit my evidence, but Grace was quick to counter every accusation. The more the other side spoke, the more they dug themselves into a hole. And then it was my turn. When the judge called me to the stand, I stood up, walking slowly toward the witness box. My knees were shaking, but my voice was steady. I wasn't nervous anymore. This was my moment. I had to make it count. I took a deep breath before speaking. I am here today because I've had enough. I've spent my whole life being manipulated, controlled, and used by the people who should have loved me unconditionally. But instead, they've treated me like a tool for their own gain. The room went quiet. My parents didn't look at me. They couldn't. They knew what I was saying was true. I continued, my voice growing stronger. I've worked hard for everything I've achieved. I've built my own life, my career. But every time I tried to do something for myself, they were there, undermining me, taking what was mine, and making me feel like I wasn't worthy of my own success. I looked directly at Peter and Lily. What you've done to me, the way you've controlled me, it stops here. This is the end of the line. I am taking back my life, and I will make sure that you are held accountable for every penny you've taken from me, for every lie you've told. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears. But I didn't look away from my parents. I didn't flinch. This was my moment. I had to stand strong. The weeks after the hearing were a blur of legal battles, more threats, and pressure from every angle. But I felt a sense of clarity in it all. I was doing the right thing. The case was still ongoing, but the momentum was shifting in my favor. My parents' manipulative tactics were starting to fall apart. Their business partners were backing away. The truth about their shady dealings was coming to light, and people were starting to see them for who they really were. And then, one day it happened. I received a call from Grace. They're offering a settlement, she said, her voice calm, but with a touch of triumph. They want to end this quietly, without going to trial. They're willing to pay for the damages and walk away. I felt a strange mix of relief and disbelief. After everything, the years of manipulation, the threats, the emotional toll, it was finally over. I wasn't sure what the future would look like, but I knew it would be mine to build, not theirs to destroy. I didn't hesitate. I signed the settlement papers, and the legal battle was finally over. I took time off work, spending long days in my apartment, reflecting on everything that had happened. I talked to Emily more, helping her untangle the mess our parents had created. It wasn't easy, and I knew it would take time, but I was determined to help her find her way too. John was by my side through it all, supporting me in ways I never thought I needed. He encouraged me to take time for myself, to reconnect with the person I had been before all of this. Slowly but surely, I started to rebuild. I began to make plans for my career, real, tangible goals that didn't involve anyone else's expectations. I started traveling, exploring new cities, new places, and new possibilities. I made new friends, people who didn't know me as Peter and Lily's daughter, but just as me. And in time, I found peace. Not just with my past, but with my future. The woman I was becoming was free. Free from guilt. Free from manipulation. Free from their shadows. It was funny how, after everything, life had begun to settle in a way I never expected. I had imagined that after the legal battle, after standing up to my parents, I would feel victorious, maybe even vindicated. But instead, I felt something quieter, something more profound. I felt free. When I walked out of that courtroom, after the final settlement was signed, I felt like I was stepping into a new chapter of my life, one that was finally mine. The weight of my parents' expectations, their manipulation, and their control had been lifted off my shoulders. And though I still had work to do, emotionally, mentally, financially, I was free. After the settlement, things shifted. Emily and I spent more time together, though it wasn't always easy. She was still reeling from the realization of how deeply my parents had manipulated both of us. There were moments of silence, of discomfort, but there were also moments of healing. I was there for her, as she had always been there for me, even when I hadn't fully realized it. But as much as I wanted to help her, I knew she had to find her way, just like I had. I couldn't be the one to fix her. The more time we spent apart from our parents, the more she started to see the truth, too. Slowly, Emily realized that she didn't have to live up to their standards either. She could make her own decisions and follow her dreams, without fearing their judgment. The phone calls from Peter and Lily still came, but they were less frequent. The venom in their voices was palpable, but the urgency was gone. They knew they couldn't control me anymore, and it drove them mad. But they had nothing left. They had played their final cards, and now they were left in the cold. I didn't answer their calls anymore. I didn't need to. I had a new phone number, a new life, a fresh start. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about thriving. I had spent so many years of my life living in fear, of disappointing my parents, of failing, of never being good enough. But the truth was, I had been good enough all along. I didn't need their approval to be successful. I didn't need their validation to know my worth. I returned to my art. The passion that had once been my escape from the suffocating grip of my parents was now my way forward. I opened a new studio, a small space where I could work without judgment. The city was buzzing with opportunity, and I was no longer afraid to take it. With John by my side, I felt like I had finally found the kind of love I deserved. one that was supportive, free of manipulation, and rooted in equality. John had never asked me to change, never tried to control me. He was simply there, steady and unwavering. He encouraged me to chase my dreams, to build something for myself. And I did. We traveled more, to new places, new countries, new experiences. The world was wide, and I had spent too long letting fear hold me back. It was time to explore, to see what life had to offer when I wasn't constantly looking over my shoulder. It was in those travels that I realized something even more profound than all the legal victories or emotional battles. I realized that peace wasn't about what you could control or how much you could fight. It was about finding contentment with who you were and where you were headed, no matter what had happened before. I went to the mountains one quiet autumn weekend, just to clear my head. It was there, walking along a trail that stretched out over the hills, that I found true peace. The crisp air filled my lungs, and I could feel the weight of the last few years lifting off me. I wasn't thinking about my parents or the fight I had won. I wasn't thinking about the past at all. I was simply present, at the moment, alive, free. It was the first time in years that I truly felt like I was in control of my life. A few months passed. Things were going well. Emily was doing better, still struggling, but she was starting to rebuild her life on her terms. And then, one afternoon, I received a call from an unexpected source. It was from an unknown number, but something in my gut told me to answer. Hello? Is this Sophia? It was Emily's voice, shaky but determined. Em? What's wrong? I think I've had enough, she said softly. I'm done. I'm cutting ties with them. They've broken me down for too long. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep pretending I'm okay with everything. My heart sank. My sister, the one who had been so caught up in their control, was finally seeing what I had seen, what we both had been avoiding for so long. The realization hit her hard, and I could hear the pain in her voice. I'm proud of you, I said, my voice steady, but full of emotion. I know it's not easy, but you're doing the right thing. You don't owe them anything. You don't have to live up to their standards anymore. I don't want it anymore. I'm ready to let them go. And in that moment, I realized something. It wasn't just me who had been fighting for freedom. Emily was too. We had both been broken by the same people, but now we were both learning how to rebuild. We were learning how to live for ourselves. Life hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. I had gone through hell and back to get to this point, emotionally drained, financially drained, and spiritually exhausted. But what I had gained was more than just freedom. I had fought for myself, for my own independence, and for my right to choose my future. And in the end, that was the greatest victory of all. So, by now, what would you do in her shoes? If your family was controlling your life, manipulating you emotionally and financially, would you be able to stand up and break free? How far would you go to protect your peace, even if it meant losing everything you thought was familiar? Let me know what you think.